I'm grateful you joined tonight, right now. While you simply rest here, your brain is already beginning to do something extraordinary. Something it has been rehearsing every night of your life. Tonight, you'll discover what sleep deprivation quietly does to every system inside you. And by the end, you'll understand why the most powerful thing you can do for your health is already happening right now. Welcome to Sleepy Mind Science. Wherever you are right now, perhaps lying in the quiet dark, your body resting against something soft, the sounds of the world growing smaller and more distant. Allow yourself to simply be here. We'll journey through 100 sleep science facts about what happens to your body when rest is taken away. From the first hour of missed sleep, to the slow unraveling of memory and healing, to the quiet miracle of what your body reclaims the moment you finally let go. These thoughtful journeys through the science of sleep build a community of minds who understand that rest is not a weakness. It is a necessity. A gentle like, subscribe, or sharing this with someone you care about creates a pathway for more searching souls to find this peaceful space and brings us closer to protecting it, one sleepy soul at a time. Your presence here tonight means more than you know. Let yourself settle completely here. Feel your jaw unclench, your breath deepen naturally. You don't need to memorize a single thing you hear tonight. Just notice that soothing heaviness beginning to spread through you, like your thoughts are slowly dimming their brightness, dissolving into the soft, safe fog of approaching sleep. Here, in this quiet space you've made for yourself, close your eyes and breathe deeply. You're resting where your body already knows how to heal itself in silence. Let your mind drift with the rhythm of your own quiet breathing. And now we begin. Your body begins to change within the very first hour of lost sleep. Most people think of sleep deprivation as something that builds slowly over days, a gradual slide into fatigue. But research consistently shows that the effects begin far sooner than that. Within 60 minutes of cutting your sleep short, measurable changes appear in your cardiovascular system, your stress hormone levels, and the electrical activity of your brain. This is not a slow erosion. It is a rapid response. Your body is finely tuned to expect sleep at predictable times. And when it doesn't arrive, it begins sending signals, biochemical, hormonal, neurological, that something has gone wrong. Sleep, it turns out, is not a passive absence of wakefulness. It is an active, intricate process. And missing even part of it sets off a cascade your body will spend hours, and sometimes days, trying to recover from. The average adult needs between 7 and 9 hours of sleep each night to function at full capacity. This is not a flexible guideline. It is a biological requirement. Supported by decades of research across institutions including the National Institutes of Health and the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. Yet studies conducted in recent years consistently show that more than 1 in 3 American adults regularly sleeps fewer than 7 hours. That gap between what the body needs and what it receives is not just a personal inconvenience. It accumulates. Scientists call this accumulated shortfall sleep debt. And unlike financial debt, it cannot be fully erased in a single long weekend of rest. The deficit leaves traces in cognition, in inflammation, in the delicate architecture of the brain itself. Your brain does not simply go quiet when you sleep. It cycles through distinct stages of activity throughout the night. each one serving a different biological purpose. The two broadest categories are NREM sleep, non-rapid eye movement, and REM sleep, or rapid eye movement. NREM itself contains 3 stages of progressively deeper rest, beginning with light drowsiness and descending into the slow wave sleep that is most restorative for the body. REM sleep, which typically appears first about 90 minutes after you fall asleep, is characterized by vivid dreaming, rapid eye movements beneath closed lids, and a brain that is, paradoxically, nearly as electrically active as it is during waking. Each of these stages has a specific role, and when sleep is cut short, some stages are lost disproportionately, with consequences that ripple outward through nearly every organ. The very first stage of sleep to suffer when you don't get enough hours is often the one most people have heard of least: slow wave sleep. The deepest stage of NREM tends to occur in greater proportions during the first half of the night. REM sleep, by contrast, becomes more abundant in the second half, particularly in the final 2 hours before natural waking. This means that someone who consistently cuts their sleep to 5 or 6 hours may be getting a reasonable amount of deep NREM sleep, but is losing a disproportionate share of their REM. And REM sleep, as research has increasingly shown, is essential for emotional regulation, memory consolidation, and the processing of complex information. Losing the tail end of sleep is not the same as losing a little of everything. It is losing something specific, and something that the brain holds dear. One of the most well-documented consequences of sleep loss is its effect on the prefrontal cortex, the region of the brain situated just behind your forehead, responsible for judgment, impulse control, complex decision-making, and the ability to see long-term consequences. Even a single night of reduced sleep measurably reduces activity in this region. Studies using functional MRI imaging have shown that after one night of sleep deprivation, the prefrontal cortex becomes noticeably less responsive to challenging tasks, while deeper, more reactive brain regions, including those associated with fear and emotional reactivity, become more dominant. This shift helps explain why people who are sleep-deprived often make less careful decisions, are quicker to react emotionally, and find it harder to regulate their responses. It isn't a matter of willpower, it is a matter of biology. Your immune system begins weakening after just one short night. The connection between sleep and immunity is one of the most thoroughly studied areas in sleep medicine. During deep sleep, your body produces and releases cytokines, small proteins that act as signals within the immune system, helping coordinate the response to infection, inflammation, and stress. Some of these cytokines are produced almost exclusively during sleep. Studies have found that people who sleep fewer than 6 hours per night are significantly more likely to develop a cold when exposed to a cold virus than those sleeping 7 or more hours. A difference so consistent across repeated trials that it held true regardless of stress levels, age, or other lifestyle factors. Sleep is, in a very real sense, one of the cornerstones of your immune defense. The body's inflammatory response is one of the first systems to shift when sleep is disrupted. Inflammation is a normal and necessary part of the immune system. It helps the body fight infection and repair damaged tissue. But chronic low-grade inflammation, the kind that smolders quietly in the background for years, is associated with a range of long-term health changes, including shifts in cardiovascular function, blood sugar regulation, and certain aspects of neurological health. Research has found that even short-term sleep restriction, as little as 4 nights of reduced sleep, can elevate blood levels of inflammatory markers, including C-reactive protein and interleukin-6. These are markers that clinicians monitor when assessing how the cardiovascular system is faring over time. The body's inflammatory state, it turns out, is exquisitely sensitive to the quality and quantity of sleep it receives. Cortisol, often called the stress hormone, is normally highest in the morning, a natural signal that helps rouse the body into wakefulness, and lowest at night, when the body prepares for sleep. This rhythm is regulated by a system called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which coordinates the body's hormonal response to stress and time of day. Sleep deprivation disrupts this rhythm. Studies have found that people who sleep poorly or too briefly show elevated evening cortisol levels. When cortisol should be low, this dysregulation doesn't just make it harder to fall asleep the next night. It also affects blood sugar regulation, suppresses immune function, and over time contributes to the gradual wear that researchers associate with accelerated cellular aging. Growth hormone, which plays a central role in cellular repair, muscle recovery, and bone density, is released primarily during the first and deepest wave of slow-wave sleep each night. This is not a coincidence. The body uses the stillness of deep sleep as the window to do its most intensive internal maintenance work. Athletes and physical laborers have long known, intuitively, that sleep is when the body rebuilds. Science has confirmed this in precise detail. When sleep is cut short or fragmented, the surge of growth hormone is blunted. The body receives less of the signal it needs to repair the microscopic damage that accumulates through daily movement and stress. Over time, this deficit shows up in slower recovery, reduced muscle synthesis, and a gradual decline in the body's ability to maintain itself. Sleep loss affects how we perceive pain. This connection, sometimes called sleep pain hyperalgesia, has been documented in numerous laboratory studies. Participants who were kept awake for extended periods, or who had their sleep fragmented during a single night, consistently showed lower pain thresholds when tested the following day, meaning they perceived the same stimuli as more painful than they had before the disruption. The mechanism involves multiple pathways, including changes in the opioid system, which regulates the body's natural pain-dampening responses, and alterations in inflammatory signaling. This finding matters enormously for people living with chronic pain conditions, because pain disrupts sleep, and the resulting sleep disruption makes pain feel more present. It is a cycle that, once established, can be very difficult to interrupt. The relationship between sleep and weight regulation is more direct than most people realize. Two hormones at the center of hunger and satiety, ghrelin and leptin, are both significantly influenced by sleep duration. Ghrelin is the hormone that stimulates appetite. Leptin is the hormone that signals fullness and satiety. When sleep is reduced, even to 6 hours for just 2 consecutive nights, studies have found that ghrelin levels rise and leptin levels fall. The result is a measurable increase in hunger, particularly for calorie-dense, carbohydrate-rich foods, This is not a matter of willpower or habit. It is a hormonal shift driven directly by inadequate sleep, and it helps explain why sleep deprivation is consistently associated with weight gain in long-term population studies. The brain's ability to consolidate memories, to transfer information from short-term storage into long-term archives, depends on sleep in ways that researchers are still working to fully understand. During sleep, and particularly during slow-wave sleep and REM sleep, the hippocampus, a seahorse-shaped structure deep in the brain that serves as a temporary holding area for new information, replays the events of the day and transfers the most relevant material to the cortex for longer-term storage. This process, called memory consolidation, requires specific sleep stages and sufficient sleep duration. Students who pull all-nighters before exams are well aware of the short-term cost. What is less appreciated is that even modest, chronic sleep restriction impairs this consolidation process night after night, quietly eroding the quality of learning and recall over time. Reaction time degrades with sleep loss in ways that parallel and sometimes exceed the impairment caused by alcohol. This comparison has been studied carefully. Research published in the journal Nature found that a person who has been awake for 17 to 19 consecutive hours shows reaction time and cognitive performance on certain tests equivalent to someone with a blood alcohol content of 0.05%. After 24 hours without sleep, performance reaches levels comparable to a blood alcohol content of 0.10%, a level that exceeds legal driving limits across most of the United States. What makes this particularly worth noting is that sleep-deprived individuals often significantly underestimate their own level of impairment. The same drowsiness that slows their performance also blunts their ability to accurately assess how affected they are. The science does not pass judgment. It simply notes the quiet parallel and lets it settle where it will. The glymphatic system, a network of fluid channels that runs alongside blood vessels in the brain, is most active during sleep, and it performs one of the most critical maintenance functions in the entire body. During waking hours, the brain produces metabolic waste products as a byproduct of its enormous energy consumption. These waste products include a protein called beta amyloid, which in high concentrations has been linked to changes observed in Alzheimer's disease. During deep sleep, the glymphatic system dramatically increases its activity. Research conducted at the University of Rochester found that the spaces between brain cells expand by nearly 60% during sleep, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to flow more freely and flush out accumulated waste. This nightly cleaning cycle is believed to be one of the reasons adequate sleep is so strongly associated with long-term brain health. The glymphatic system is responsible for this clearance, and researchers recently found a way to observe what happens when it is given one fewer night to do its work. A study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences used positron emission tomography to scan the brains of healthy adults after a full night of rest, and again after staying awake for approximately 31 hours. Researchers observed a measurable increase in beta amyloid in the hippocampus and thalamus, regions associated with early Alzheimer's-related changes. The study was small, and researchers noted it raised more questions than it answered. But it offered the first direct look at what a single sleepless night may begin to set in motion in the living human brain. What is significant about this finding is not that one sleepless night causes any particular disease, but that it demonstrates the brain's cleaning system is not operating on a weekly schedule. It operates every night. And when sleep is consistently cut short, the accumulation of certain proteins may accelerate in ways that, over a lifetime, are worth taking quietly to heart. The cardiovascular system is profoundly affected by sleep. During deep NREM sleep, heart rate slows. Blood pressure decreases by 10 to 20%, a phenomenon researchers refer to as the nocturnal dip, and the entire cardiovascular system enters a restorative state of reduced demand. This nightly dip in blood pressure is considered a natural and necessary part of cardiovascular health. People who do not experience this dip, often because their sleep is fragmented or too brief, are at measurably higher risk of certain cardiovascular changes over time compared to those sleeping 7 to 9 hours. The heart, it seems, relies on sleep as much as any other organ, and the generosity of that nightly rest, the lowering, the quieting, the deep unhurrying, is something the heart receives gratefully. Every single night you allow it. Blood sugar regulation is another system closely tied to sleep duration and quality. During sleep, the body's sensitivity to insulin, the hormone that allows cells to absorb glucose from the bloodstream, is carefully maintained and, in some ways, restored. Sleep deprivation disrupts this process. Studies have shown that restricting healthy adults to 4 hours of sleep for just 6 nights can produce a state of insulin resistance comparable to early metabolic dysfunction. In one well-known experiment, glucose tolerance, the body's ability to clear sugar from the blood after a meal, declined by 40% after 6 nights of restricted sleep. The researchers could reverse this effect by allowing participants to recover with normal sleep. This reversibility is important, but so is the speed with which the change accumulated. The respiratory system is deeply intertwined with sleep, and the relationship runs in both directions. Sleep affects breathing, and breathing affects sleep. During REM sleep, the muscles that maintain tone in the upper airway relax considerably. In people with obstructive sleep apnea, a condition estimated to affect more than 30 million Americans, though many remain undiagnosed, this relaxation allows the airway to narrow or close, causing breathing to pause repeatedly throughout the night. Each pause triggers a partial arousal from sleep as the brain registers the change in oxygen. These micro-arousals are often too brief to be consciously remembered, but they can fragment the sleep architecture throughout the night, leaving the person feeling unrested no matter how many hours they spend in bed. Researchers have developed many gentle and effective approaches to address this condition, and recognizing its presence is the first quiet step toward better rest. Emotional memory, the way the brain stores and later retrieves memories that carry emotional weight, is processed differently from neutral, factual memory, and sleep plays a distinct role in both. Research has found that REM sleep is particularly involved in what some scientists describe as emotional memory processing, a phenomenon in which the brain seems to preserve the informational content of a distressing experience while gradually reducing its emotional charge. This is sometimes described as the sleep to forget, sleep to remember model. The idea that sleep helps you retain what you learned from a difficult experience while softening the raw emotional intensity of the memory itself. Insufficient REM sleep disrupts this processing, leaving difficult memories more emotionally raw, a finding with particular relevance for understanding the relationship between sleep and certain stress-related conditions. The skin, the body's largest organ, undergoes significant repair and regeneration during sleep. The release of growth hormone during deep sleep stimulates the production of collagen, the structural protein that gives skin its firmness and elasticity. Cells throughout the body divide and regenerate at higher rates during sleep than during waking. Studies measuring skin barrier recovery, the skin's ability to repair itself after exposure to irritants or ultraviolet radiation, have found that this recovery is significantly faster when sleep is adequate. People who sleep poorly show measurably slower wound healing, higher rates of skin inflammation, and accelerated visible signs of skin aging. The expression beauty sleep may sound colloquial, but it is grounded in genuine cellular biology. The relationship between sleep and mental health is bidirectional and deeply intertwined. Sleep disruption is one of the earliest and most consistent features associated with depression, anxiety, and other mood-related conditions. But sleep deprivation is also a contributor, not merely a consequence, of deteriorating mental health over time. Studies following large populations over years have found that individuals who report chronic sleep difficulties have significantly elevated rates of developing depression and anxiety disorders. Independent of other risk factors, the neural pathways involved overlap considerably. The same brain regions and neurotransmitter systems that regulate sleep are also central to mood regulation, stress, response, and emotional resilience. When the sleep system is chronically under strain, the broader emotional landscape rarely remains untouched. Testosterone, the primary male sex hormone, though present in smaller amounts in all bodies, is predominantly produced during sleep, and particularly during REM sleep. Studies have found that sleep restriction to 5 hours per night for just 1 week can reduce testosterone levels in young, healthy men by 10 to 15%. This decline was described by researchers as equivalent to aging 10 to 15 years in terms of hormonal profile. Testosterone plays a role not only in sexual function, but also in mood stability, muscle maintenance, bone density, and cardiovascular health. Similar disruptions have been observed in studies examining the relationship between sleep loss and female reproductive hormones, suggesting that the broader hormonal system depends on sleep as a foundational condition for its normal rhythm. The gut microbiome, the vast ecosystem of bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms living in the digestive tract, is sensitive to sleep duration and timing in ways researchers have only begun to understand. Studies have found that even short periods of sleep restriction can measurably alter the composition of the gut microbiome, shifting the balance away from beneficial bacterial populations and towards species associated with inflammation and metabolic change. The gut-brain axis, the bidirectional communication network linking the digestive system and the central nervous system, appears to be one of the pathways through which sleep loss affects mood, cognition, and appetite. This is a relatively new field of inquiry, but the early evidence suggests that the gut is one of the more unexpected places where the effects of inadequate sleep quietly accumulate. Attention and sustained concentration, the ability to stay focused on a single task over time, are among the cognitive functions most immediately and profoundly affected by sleep loss. Even mild sleep restriction to 6 hours per night for 2 weeks produces deficits in sustained attention that are comparable to 2 full nights without sleep. What makes this particularly worth understanding is that the participants in such studies typically do not perceive themselves as severely impaired. They adapt to their reduced alertness and come to regard it as their normal state. This adaptation to impairment, this recalibration of the baseline, is one of the more subtle aspects of chronic sleep debt. The person does not feel dramatically worse. They simply perform more slowly, think less clearly, and respond less quickly. And they do so without fully knowing it. The social dimensions of sleep deprivation extend well beyond the individual. Research published in Nature Communications found that sleep-deprived individuals are perceived by others as less attractive, less healthy-looking, and less approachable than when they are well-rested, based purely on facial photographs. A separate line of research has found that sleep-deprived people are less willing to help others, less accurate in reading the emotional expressions of those around them, and more likely to experience interpersonal friction. Sleep, it appears, is not only a private biological necessity, it is one of the quiet foundations of human social life, something that shapes how we see others and how others experience being near us. Let's pause here and notice your body. As you breathe out slowly, appreciate each tiny cell inside. Right now, while you simply rest, trillions of systems are working in silence. Heart beating, lungs breathing, brain tending to itself, all without your direction. Notice the gentle weight of your body where it rests, the rise and fall of your chest, the stillness in your hands. You are a complete, self-sustaining world, doing its most important work in the quiet dark. Now we continue. The concept of sleep debt is useful, but it has limits. For many years, researchers and popular science writers described sleep debt as something that could be paid back, implying that sleeping extra on weekends could compensate for a shortfall during the week. More recent research has complicated this picture considerably. While some aspects of cognitive performance and subjective sleepiness do improve with recovery sleep, studies have found that certain effects of chronic sleep restriction, particularly metabolic and inflammatory changes, do not fully reverse even after several nights of adequate sleep. A study tracking participants through a cycle of sleep restriction and recovery found that reaction time and attention returned toward baseline, but markers of metabolic change remained elevated, suggesting the body carries a longer biological memory of sleep debt than was previously understood. The circadian rhythm, the body's internal 24-hour clock, governs when you feel sleepy, when you feel alert, when your body temperature rises and falls, and when dozens of hormones are released. This clock is set primarily by light, particularly the blue wavelength light present in morning sunlight. When you consistently sleep at irregular times, going to bed and waking at different hours on different days, you create a condition researchers call social jet lag, in which the body's internal clock falls out of alignment with external time cues. Social jet lag has been associated with elevated rates of metabolic changes, low mood, and impaired cognitive performance. It is not just about how much you sleep. When you sleep matters deeply as well. The adenosine system is one of the brain's primary mechanisms for tracking wakefulness and creating the drive for sleep. Adenosine is a chemical that accumulates in the brain throughout the day as a byproduct of neural activity. The longer you stay awake, the more adenosine builds up, and the greater the pressure to sleep. When you finally sleep, the brain clears this accumulated adenosine, and you wake feeling rested, Caffeine works by blocking adenosine receptors in the brain, preventing the molecule from binding and thereby masking the signal of fatigue. This is why caffeine does not eliminate the need for sleep. It only postpones the feeling of it. The adenosine continues to accumulate even when its signal is blocked, which is why the fatigue returns, often noticeably, when caffeine wears off. The timing of when you feel sleepiest is not random. The circadian system produces two distinct periods of heightened sleepiness over the course of each 24-hour day. The first and more profound occurs in the middle of the night, between roughly 2 and 4 in the morning. The second occurs in the early afternoon, typically between 1 and 3 p.m. The familiar post-lunch dip. This afternoon trough in alertness is not caused by eating lunch. It is an intrinsic feature of the circadian rhythm, present even when no food has been consumed. Many cultures around the world have traditionally scheduled a rest period during this window. Modern research into chronobiology suggests that brief napping during this window can restore alertness and cognitive performance. Though the timing of naps requires care to avoid disrupting nighttime sleep. Sleep architecture. The pattern of sleep stages across a night is not uniform across a lifetime. In early infancy, humans spend up to 50% of their sleep time in REM sleep. This proportion declines through childhood, settling into the adult pattern of roughly 20 to 25% REM by early adulthood. As people age into their 50s, 60s, and beyond, the amount of deep, slow-wave sleep begins to decline, often significantly. This reduction in deep sleep is associated with less efficient glymphatic clearance, reduced growth hormone release, and a greater susceptibility to sleep fragmentation. Older adults also tend to shift their circadian timing earlier, waking earlier and feeling sleepy earlier in the evening. These are normal features of aging, but they explain why sleep quality requires more active and gentle attention as we move through the years. The link between sleep loss and elevated blood pressure is one of the most consistently replicated findings in sleep medicine. During the nocturnal dip that accompanies deep sleep, the cardiovascular system rests. The heart beats more slowly. Blood vessels relax. The body uses this window to regulate and restore circulatory health. When sleep is fragmented or insufficient, this dip is reduced or absent over weeks and months. This sustained elevation of nighttime blood pressure contributes to arterial changes and an increased strain on the heart over time. A large-scale analysis of population health data found that adults sleeping fewer than 6 hours per night had a significantly higher lifetime likelihood of developing clinically significant hypertension than those sleeping 7 to 9 hours, independent of diet, exercise, and genetic background. The hormonal changes we explored a little earlier tell part of the story of why sleep loss affects appetite and food choices. But there is a second pathway, entirely separate, running through the brain's reward circuitry. The reward system, centered on structures including the nucleus accumbens, is responsible for motivating behavior through the experience of pleasure, anticipation, and craving. Studies have found that sleep loss amplifies the activity of the reward system in response to desirable stimuli, including food and risk-taking opportunities, while reducing the regulatory influence of the prefrontal cortex. This combination produces a state of heightened impulsivity and reduced reflective thinking. Sleep-deprived individuals are more likely to choose immediate rewards over delayed ones, and to pursue habits that feel satisfying in the moment. The brain becomes simultaneously more drawn to pleasure and less able to quietly weigh the consequences. Learning a new physical skill, playing a musical instrument, learning a new sport, mastering a complex manual task, depends on sleep in a way that is distinct from declarative memory, the kind that involves facts and events. Motor memory, the type of learning encoded in repeated physical movement, is consolidated during specific stages of sleep, particularly late-stage NREM sleep. Studies have shown that people who sleep after a period of motor practice perform significantly better when tested the following day than those who remained awake over the same time period. The sleeping brain appears to rehearse and refine motor sequences, compressing them into more efficient neural patterns. This is one of the reasons coaches and music teachers often recommend rest after intensive practice. The body is not just recovering, it is actively learning. The relationship between sleep and creativity is well established, but often underappreciated. During REM sleep, the brain's associative networks are highly active, forming connections between distantly related concepts, blending information from different memory domains, and generating novel combinations that would be unlikely to arise during the more focused, convergent thinking of waking. This is the neurological basis for the common experience of waking, with a solution to a problem that seemed intractable the night before. Research has demonstrated that REM sleep specifically enhances the ability to solve problems that require insight, the kind of thinking that involves making unexpected connections rather than logical step-by-step reasoning. Artists, writers, scientists, and engineers throughout history have described sleep as an integral part of their creative process. The neuroscience increasingly supports what they sensed intuitively. The thyroid gland, which regulates metabolism, body temperature, energy levels, and the function of virtually every organ in the body, is sensitive to disruptions in sleep timing and duration. Thyroid-stimulating hormone, the signal the brain sends to the thyroid gland, is released in a rhythmic pattern synchronized with the sleep-wake cycle. Studies have found that sleep deprivation alters the timing and amplitude of this hormone release, with downstream effects on thyroid function and metabolic rate. These effects are typically subtle in the short term, but their accumulation over months and years may contribute to the metabolic changes that are commonly observed in chronically sleep-deprived populations. The thyroid is, in a sense, one of the quiet witnesses to the quality of your sleep, noting night after night whether the conditions for its best work have been met. Pain perception changes not only in intensity but in character with sleep deprivation. Researchers studying the relationship between sleep and pain have found that after insufficient sleep, the brain's descending pain modulation pathways, the internal systems that dampen pain signals traveling up from the body, become less effective. This means that the brain loses some of its capacity to turn down the volume on pain. At the same time, the somatosensory cortex, the region that processes physical sensations, becomes more reactive. Together, these changes create a state of heightened pain sensitivity that is entirely separate from the original source of pain. People with chronic conditions including fibromyalgia, arthritis, and lower back pain consistently report that their symptoms feel more present after poor sleep. And research confirms that the neurological basis for the worsening is measurable and real. The brain's capacity for working memory, the ability to hold information in mind while using it to perform a task, is among the cognitive functions most exquisitely sensitive to sleep loss. Working memory is sometimes described as the mental workspace of thought. It is what you use when you follow a conversation, do mental arithmetic, navigate a complex argument, or remember what you were about to say. Studies consistently find that working memory capacity declines significantly after even moderate sleep restriction. This impairment compounds across sleep-deprived nights, becoming progressively more pronounced without the individual's full awareness. For people whose work requires complex reasoning, rapid problem-solving, or high-stakes decisions, physicians, pilots, educators, and many others, this quiet erosion of working memory has consequences that extend well beyond personal discomfort. Microsleeps, brief, involuntary episodes of unconsciousness lasting between 1 and 30 seconds, are one of the more striking manifestations of sleep deprivation. They occur when the brain, overwhelmed by the accumulated pressure of prolonged wakefulness, essentially forces brief shutdowns of certain neural circuits. The person experiencing a microsleep may have no awareness that it occurred. Their eyes may remain open. They may continue to appear engaged with their surroundings. But for that brief window, they are not processing information, not responsive to new stimuli, and not capable of reacting to changes in their environment. A microsleep lasting just 2 or 3 seconds at 60 miles per hour means the vehicle travels roughly 300 feet with no conscious driver. Sleep researchers study microsleeps closely, not to create worry, but to understand how the body signals its own limits. The immune system does more than fight infection. It also plays a role in brain maintenance, and this role is dependent on sleep in ways that researchers have only recently begun to document. Microglia, specialized immune cells that reside permanently in the brain, perform a housekeeping function during sleep, removing debris, pruning unnecessary synaptic connections, and managing inflammation within neural tissue. This process, called synaptic pruning, is essential for maintaining the brain's efficiency and plasticity. Research has found that sleep deprivation can trigger altered microglial activity, affecting how broadly these cells carry out their maintenance role, and potentially removing connections that should be preserved. This finding adds another layer to the accumulating evidence that sleep supports brain architecture in ways that extend well beyond a single night. The relationship between sleep and life expectancy has been studied in large populations across many countries, and the findings consistently point in one direction. Adults who regularly sleep fewer than 6 hours per night have measurably higher mortality rates from all causes compared to those sleeping 7 to 9 hours. This association holds even after controlling for other health behaviors, pre-existing conditions, and socioeconomic factors. Scientists are careful to note that association does not establish direct causation in population studies, but the direction of the evidence is consistent, and the magnitude of the relationship is large enough that sleep researchers consider it one of the most important areas of modifiable health behavior in the modern era. Not a dramatic warning, just a quiet, steady finding, pointing in the same direction it always has. You're still here, still awake, still drifting through these quiet truths with me. Take a slow breath. Notice how your body feels a little heavier now, a little closer to the stillness that's been waiting for you. We're learning together, you and I and every quiet mind listening tonight. that rest is not something you earn. It's something you return to. There's no rush, no destination, just the gentle current of understanding carrying us forward. Let's continue. Napping, when used thoughtfully, is one of the most effective tools available for restoring cognitive performance after sleep debt has accumulated. A nap of 20 to 30 minutes, short enough to avoid entering deep, slow-wave sleep, which can cause sleep inertia. The groggy, disoriented feeling of waking mid-cycle has been shown to restore alertness, improve reaction time, and enhance mood for several hours. Research conducted by NASA, scientists with commercial airline pilots on long-haul flights found that a 40-minute rest opportunity, during which pilots averaged about 26 minutes of actual sleep, was associated with a 34% reduction in performance lapses and measurable improvements in physiological alertness during the critical final phase of flight. The nap did not eliminate fatigue, but it narrowed the gap between what was needed and what remained. The experience of falling asleep, the hypnagogic state, as it is known, is a transition period that many people experience as fleeting, but which contains some of the more curious phenomena of human consciousness. During the hypnagogic phase, the brain shifts from alpha waves, the relaxed, wakeful state, toward theta waves, and vivid sensory experiences are common. These may include flashes of color, brief dreamlike images, the sensation of falling, or sudden full-body jerks, known as hypnic jerks. These jerks are involuntary muscle contractions that occur as the nervous system transitions into sleep. And though they can feel unexpected, they are entirely normal. Some researchers have proposed that hypnic jerks may be a vestigial reflex, a protective response that may have prevented early primates from relaxing so completely that they fell from trees during rest. The body temperature drop that accompanies sleep onset is not incidental. It is functional. Core body temperature begins to fall in the hours before natural sleep onset, driven by the circadian system, and continues to decline through the night, reaching its lowest point in the early morning hours. This cooling is one of the primary triggers for sleep. The brain interprets the drop in core temperature as a signal to initiate the sleep program. This is why warm baths, taken 1 to 2 hours before bedtime, can paradoxically improve sleep onset. The warm water draws blood to the skin surface, accelerating heat loss from the body and causing core temperature to drop more quickly once you're out of the bath. The body's thermoregulatory system and the sleep-wake system are more closely coupled than most people imagine. Dreams are not confined to REM sleep. Though REM dreams are the most vivid and emotionally complex, NREM sleep also produces dreamlike mental experiences, though they tend to be less narrative, less emotionally vivid, and more thought-like, resembling fragments of waking cognition rather than fully immersive scenarios. When people are awakened from different sleep stages and asked to report their mental experience, those emerging from REM sleep most often report true dreams, with characters, settings, and storylines. Those awakened from NREM sleep more often describe fragmented thoughts, images, or sensations. Research into the function of NREM mental activity is less advanced than REM dream research, but some scientists speculate that it may serve a role in the quiet rehearsal and organization of upcoming events and concerns. The brain's default mode network, a set of interconnected regions that are most active when the mind is not focused on an external task, as during daydreaming, self-reflection, and mental time travel, is closely involved in the experience of sleep. During the transition from wakefulness to sleep, the default mode network gradually increases its activity as external awareness decreases. During NREM sleep, this network quiets significantly. During REM sleep, certain components of it reactivate, contributing to the self-referential, narrative quality of dreams. Disrupted sleep patterns are associated with altered default mode network activity during waking, which may help explain the ruminative, circling quality of thought that people with insomnia so often describe. The network that wanders when we rest is also the network that struggles when rest is denied. Melatonin, the hormone most closely associated with sleep onset, is produced by the pineal gland, a small structure deep in the center of the brain. Its release is triggered by darkness and suppressed by light, making it the body's primary chemical signal for nighttime. Melatonin does not cause sleep directly. It is more accurately described as a signal of darkness, a timing hormone that tells the body when it is appropriate to sleep. Blood levels of melatonin rise about 2 hours before natural sleep onset and remain elevated throughout the night, declining as morning approaches. Exposure to artificial light, particularly the blue wavelength light emitted by screens, suppresses melatonin production and delays its release, pushing back the sleep window and making it harder to fall asleep at the desired time. The liver performs many of its most critical metabolic functions during sleep, synchronized with the circadian rhythm. These include the production of glucose from non-carbohydrate sources, lipid metabolism, and the regulation of cholesterol. Studies in chronobiology have found that disrupting the timing of sleep, even without changing its duration, alters these liver processes in measurable ways. Shift workers, people who work overnight schedules and sleep during the day, show patterns of liver function that differ meaningfully from day workers, including elevated triglyceride levels and altered glucose metabolism, even when diet and total sleep duration are held constant. The timing of sleep, relative to the liver's internal clock, matters for metabolic health in ways that researchers are still working to fully appreciate. Research into the neural patterns associated with insomnia has produced a consistent finding. People with chronic insomnia show elevated activity in several brain regions associated with arousal, vigilance, and emotional processing, not only at night, but during the day as well. This heightened idle state appears to be central to the insomnia experience. It is not simply that those who struggle to sleep cannot wind down at night. Their nervous system is running at a higher baseline throughout the day, making them simultaneously more fatigued and less able to switch off. Cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, known as CBTI, is now recommended by major health organizations, including the American College of Physicians, as the first-line treatment for chronic insomnia, precisely because it targets this pattern at its source, rather than simply sedating the brain. The spinal cord and peripheral nervous system do not rest passively during sleep. During REM sleep, the brain stem actively generates a state of muscular atonia, a near-complete relaxation of the voluntary muscles. This serves an important protective function, It prevents the dreaming brain from physically acting out the movements occurring in dreams. In people with REM sleep behavior disorder, a condition in which this relaxation mechanism is incomplete, individuals may physically act out their dreams. Research has found a notable association between REM sleep behavior disorder and the later development of certain neurodegenerative conditions, suggesting that the disorder may represent an early signal of underlying neurological change, rather than a separate condition entirely. Sleep science, in this way, continues to offer windows into processes that are still being understood. Halfway through our journey tonight, one truth has emerged again and again from every angle we've examined. Sleep is not a passive state of rest. It is an active, orchestrated, biologically indispensable process on which every system of the human body depends. The brain cleans itself. The immune system replenishes. Hormones are calibrated. Memories are organized. Emotions are processed. Pain is managed. The cardiovascular system restores itself. The metabolic system recalibrates. All of this happens in the quiet dark, without effort, without awareness, simply because you are here, resting, and the promise of what lies ahead. In the second half of this journey is the other side of this story. Not what is lost to sleep deprivation, but what is quietly, gently, and reliably reclaimed the moment rest returns. And now, let's simply notice. Each breath you take right now, each slow inhale, each quiet exhale, is part of a cycle your body has been performing for your entire life. While the world outside continues moving, this second, this breath, this stillness belongs only to you. Right now, your nervous system is beginning to settle. Your heart rate is finding its slower rhythm. Your brain is beginning the process of shifting toward the deeper frequencies of rest. You don't need to do anything, just breathe. And we continue drifting. The kidneys follow a circadian rhythm of their own, adjusting their rate of filtration and urine production across the day-night cycle. During sleep, the kidneys slow their production of urine, a process regulated by antidiuretic hormone, which is released in higher amounts during the night. This is why most people can sleep for 7 or 8 hours without needing to use the bathroom. Disrupting sleep timing or duration interferes with this hormonal regulation, which is one of the reasons that sleep-deprived individuals and those with circadian disruption often experience increased nighttime urination. This seemingly minor inconvenience matters because each awakening represents a fragmentation of sleep architecture, interrupting the cycles of restoration that the body depends upon. The eye, and the visual system more broadly, undergoes a fascinating transition during sleep. During waking, the eyes are the brain's primary source of external information. During sleep, the visual cortex does not go dark. During REM sleep in particular, the visual cortex becomes highly active, generating the visual imagery of dreams from internal sources rather than external ones. The rapid eye movements that give REM sleep its name appear to correlate with shifts in the direction of gaze within the dream environment, as if the dreaming brain is genuinely tracking movement within the imagined scene. Meanwhile, the eyes produce tears during sleep, and the blink reflex slows dramatically. The sleeping eye is not absent. It is simply attending to a different world. The relationship between sleep and athletic performance has attracted intense scientific interest in recent years. driven partly by the growing recognition that sleep may be among the most underutilized tools for performance care. Studies across multiple sports, basketball, tennis, swimming, track and field, have found that extending sleep to 9 or 10 hours per night improves reaction time, accuracy, speed, and endurance, while reducing injury rates. A study with basketball players at a major university found that extending sleep to 10 hours per night led to measurable improvements in sprint times, free throw accuracy, three-point shooting, and player-reported mood and energy. The improvements were not trivial. They were large enough that, if produced by any other single change in routine, they would be considered noteworthy. During slow-wave sleep, the brain produces characteristic patterns of electrical activity known as sleep spindles and K-complexes. Sleep spindles, brief bursts of 12 to 15 Hz brain waves, have been linked to learning and memory consolidation. Researchers found that individuals with higher densities of sleep spindles tend to perform better on measures of fluid intelligence and have more efficient memory encoding. K-complexes are large, slow waveforms that appear spontaneously during light NREM sleep and are thought to play a role in suppressing cortical arousal, essentially helping the sleeping brain stay asleep in the face of minor external disturbances. Together, these waveforms represent the brain actively protecting and enriching its own rest, in ways that leave measurable marks on cognitive performance the following day. The lungs and respiratory muscles also show circadian variation in their function, with lung capacity and airway resistance varying across the day-night cycle. Overnight, airway resistance tends to increase, a factor that makes nighttime the period when respiratory symptoms in certain conditions may feel more present. This circadian variation in lung function is driven partly by cortisol, which has bronchodilating effects that decline overnight, and partly by the natural settling of inflammatory processes that occurs with the body's horizontal posture and reduced activity. Understanding these rhythms has practical implications for when medications are most effectively administered, a field known as chronopharmacology, which studies how the timing of drug doses interacts with biological rhythms to maximize their benefit. The enteric nervous system, sometimes called the second brain, is the network of over 500 million neurons embedded in the walls of the gastrointestinal tract. It governs digestion, gut motility, and the production of dozens of neurotransmitters, including approximately 90% of the body's serotonin. The enteric nervous system follows its own circadian rhythm, synchronized with the central brain's sleep-wake cycle through the vagus nerve and hormonal signals. Sleep deprivation disrupts this gut-brain synchrony, altering the timing and efficiency of digestive processes and contributing to symptoms that many people with disrupted sleep recognize intuitively. The gut, it turns out, is one of the more unexpected places where the quality of your nights quietly shows up. Bone health is influenced by sleep through several interconnected pathways. Growth hormone, released during deep, slow-wave sleep, stimulates the activity of osteoblasts, the cells responsible for building new bone tissue. Cortisol, which rises with sleep deprivation, has the opposite effect, inhibiting bone-building activity and promoting resorption. Studies tracking bone mineral density in populations with chronic sleep disorders have found lower bone density and higher fracture rates compared to normal sleepers, even after controlling for age. Sex, and physical activity levels. This finding carries particular significance for adolescents, whose bones are still actively developing, and for those already navigating the natural bone changes of later life. Sleep, quietly and without announcement, is one of the builders of the skeleton. The sense of hearing remains partially active during sleep, more so during lighter sleep stages, and significantly reduced during deep, slow-wave sleep. The auditory cortex continues to process sounds throughout the night, but the brain's response to those sounds is gated. It evaluates whether a sound represents something worth attending to, and only generates a full arousal response when it determines that action is needed. This is why a sleeping parent can remain undisturbed by street noise, but will wake immediately at the sound of a child's cry. The brain, even in sleep, is performing a continuous and selective evaluation of the sonic environment. Even in stillness, some part of you remains present, listening, attending, keeping watch. The connection between sleep and Alzheimer's disease research has become one of the most active frontiers in neuroscience. In addition to the glymphatic clearance of beta amyloid, researchers have found that tau protein, another molecule studied in relation to Alzheimer's pathology, also shows changes with sleep deprivation. Studies examining cerebrospinal fluid found that tau levels rose in healthy adults after a night without sleep. The research community is careful to note that chronic insufficient sleep is a potentially modifiable contributor to this accumulation, and that its long-term significance, while still being studied, is taken seriously enough to have changed how many sleep scientists discuss the relationship between rest and brain health over a lifetime. Adequate sleep is not a guarantee of anything, but it is one of the few things within reach that may genuinely support the brain's long-term well-being. Dreams serve a function that goes beyond simple memory replay. Researchers found that the dreaming brain actively works to integrate newly acquired information with existing knowledge, drawing unexpected connections across domains and time periods. This process, sometimes called offline memory reactivation, appears to be particularly important for abstract learning, the kind that involves understanding principles and patterns rather than memorizing specific facts. People who dream about a task they have been learning show disproportionate improvement the following day compared to those who slept without dreaming about it. The content of dreams, it appears, is not random noise. It reflects, at least in part, the brain's ongoing effort to understand, connect, and contextualize experience. The skin's circadian rhythm affects its ability to protect against ultraviolet radiation. Researchers studying the skin's cellular repair mechanisms have found that these mechanisms are significantly more active during the night than during the day. This makes biological sense. The daytime is when ultraviolet exposure occurs, and the nighttime is when repair can proceed without interruption. When sleep is disrupted or shortened, the time available for this repair is reduced, and cellular changes in skin accumulate more quickly. This finding adds to the growing body of evidence that sleep is not merely a rest state for the brain. It is a repair state for the entire body, including its outermost layer. The connection between sleep and social bonding is mediated, in part, by oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone, whose rhythms are sensitive to both sleep timing and quality. Studies have found that sleep-deprived individuals report lower feelings of social connection and greater feelings of loneliness. Research published in Nature Communications found that sleep-deprived participants were perceived by others as more socially withdrawn, and that their withdrawal cues could subtly influence the social behavior of those around them. Sleep, in this sense, is not only a personal health matter, it is a social good, quietly shaping the quality of every interaction, including the ones that matter most to us. The relationship between sleep and the brain's reward system carries implications that extend into the area of habit formation and substance use. Sleep deprivation amplifies the brain's sensitivity to reward-related stimuli, increases impulsivity, and reduces the capacity for reflective decision-making. At the same time, many substances that affect sleep, including alcohol, cannabis, and certain stimulants, profoundly disrupt sleep architecture, often reducing or eliminating REM sleep. Alcohol, for example, may hasten sleep onset, but significantly suppresses REM sleep in the second half of the night, resulting in a sleep that is less restorative than it appears. Understanding this pattern, in which poor sleep creates vulnerability to certain habits, and those habits further degrade sleep, is considered an important dimension of sleep-informed healthcare. Chronic pain and chronic insomnia are so frequently co-occurring that clinicians now routinely assess for one when the other is present. The neurological overlap between pain processing and sleep regulation runs deep. The same brain regions involved in pain modulation, including the anterior cingulate cortex, the insula, and the thalamus, are also heavily involved in regulating sleep and arousal. Interventions that improve sleep quality have been found to reduce perceived pain intensity in populations with fibromyalgia, arthritis, and chronic back pain, even when the underlying physical condition has not changed. This finding suggests that improving sleep is not merely a comfort measure for people living with ongoing pain. It is a direct and evidence-based part of managing how pain is experienced. The brain's ability to gently set aside intrusive thoughts, to redirect attention away from unwanted mental content, is significantly affected by sleep loss. This function is one of the executive operations of the prefrontal cortex, which is among the brain regions most responsive to sleep deprivation. Research has found that sleep-deprived individuals show greater intrusion of difficult thoughts, reduced ability to redirect attention away from negative stimuli, and more difficulty allowing certain memories to simply pass. This mechanism helps explain why anxiety tends to feel more present with poor sleep, and why the quiet hours of a sleepless night so often fill with thoughts that the daytime mind manages more easily. The very architecture of restful thinking depends, it seems, on adequate rest. Hearing and sound processing follow a pattern of sleep stage specificity. During NREM sleep, auditory processing is reduced but not absent. External sounds still reach the auditory cortex, where they are assessed for relevance. During REM sleep, auditory responsiveness is further reduced, and the primary source of auditory experience is internal. The sounds of dreams. Researchers studying the auditory system during sleep have found that the brain's response to familiar voices, particularly voices of people close to the sleeper, remains more active during sleep than the response to unfamiliar voices or non-speech sounds. This suggests that even in sleep, the social significance of voices shapes neural processing, preserving a thread of connection to the people who matter most. The body is, in many ways, an orchestra, and sleep is the condition under which every section stays in time. Organs throughout the body operate on internal clocks synchronized by the sleep-wake cycle. When that cycle is disrupted, the synchrony between systems begins to drift. The liver processes nutrients according to a timetable. The kidneys adjust their filtration. The immune system coordinates its responses. The gut maintains its microbiome. Even natural killer cells, a specialized class of immune cell that plays a role in the body's surveillance of abnormal cells, have been shown to decline measurably after sleep restriction, with numbers recovering toward baseline once adequate sleep returns. The body's internal coordination depends on rest as its shared timekeeper. Sleep and language consolidation are deeply linked. Research with infants, children, and adults has consistently found that learning new words, grammar, structures, and phonological patterns is significantly enhanced by sleep following the learning period. Infants who nap after exposure to new words show markedly better retention of those words the next day compared to infants who stayed awake over the same interval. In adults, the structural consolidation of newly acquired language, the embedding of new vocabulary into the larger network of existing linguistic knowledge, occurs primarily during sleep. This has practical implications for language learning, suggesting that study sessions followed by sleep are considerably more efficient than equivalent study sessions followed by more wakefulness. The body's response to vaccines is enhanced by adequate sleep in ways that have direct relevance for health. Studies examining immune responses to influenza and hepatitis vaccines have found that participants who slept fewer than 6 hours per night in the week following vaccination produced significantly lower antibody levels, the measure of immune response strength, than those who slept 7 or more hours. In some studies, the sleep-deprived group produced less than half the antibody response of the well-rested group. This suggests that sleep is not merely a backdrop condition for vaccination. It is an active participant in the immune response, one that determines, in part, how effectively a vaccine will work. The relationship between sleep and empathy is more complex than simply feeling more irritable when tired. Research using neuroimaging has found that sleep deprivation reduces activity in brain regions specifically associated with recognizing and responding to the emotional states of others, including the medial prefrontal cortex and the right temporoparietal junction. Participants tested after sleep deprivation showed reduced accuracy in identifying emotions from facial expressions, and reduced activation of the neural circuitry associated with empathic concern, the felt sense of caring about another person's experience. Empathy, like cognition, appears to be a biological capacity that depends on biological maintenance, and sleep is one of the most fundamental forms that maintenance takes. The phenomenon of sleep inertia, the groggy, disoriented state that follows waking from deep sleep, is caused by a slow transition of the brain from the patterns of deep NREM activity back to the waking state. During this transition, some brain regions, particularly the prefrontal cortex, reactivate more slowly than others, creating a temporary state of reduced cognitive capacity that can last from a few minutes to more than half an hour in some individuals. Sleep inertia is more pronounced when waking occurs mid-cycle. During deep, slow-wave sleep, waking naturally at the end of a sleep cycle, when the brain is already transitioning toward lighter sleep, produces a significantly more alert and functional state than being abruptly awakened from depth. The body, whenever possible, prefers to surface on its own, Long-duration space missions have provided researchers with a unique setting for studying the effects of chronic sleep restriction. Data from astronauts aboard the International Space Station show that most experience significant sleep reduction throughout their missions, averaging approximately 6 hours per night, despite having 8 hours allocated for sleep. Among the documented observations are reduced reaction time, impaired spatial reasoning, elevated inflammatory markers, and declines in immune function, all consistent with the broader sleep research literature. These findings have influenced how space agencies design crew schedules, habitat lighting, and sleep protocols for future long-duration missions. The need for adequate sleep, it turns out, does not diminish as you leave the atmosphere. Nightmares. Disturbing dreams, vivid enough to cause awakening, are more common after stressful periods and in people with insufficient or disrupted sleep. They occur predominantly during REM sleep and are thought to represent an intensification of the emotional memory processing that REM normally performs. In some stress-related conditions, nightmares are among the most prevalent and distressing symptoms, and research has found that the nighttime replay of difficult memories in these dreams can differ from normal emotional memory processing in its ability to achieve the emotional softening that non-distressing REM processing typically provides. New approaches targeting nightmares specifically, including imagery, rehearsal therapy, and certain other interventions, have shown promising results and are increasingly integrated into trauma-informed care. The concept of sleep efficiency, the percentage of time in bed actually spent asleep, is one of the key metrics used by sleep specialists to evaluate sleep quality. A sleep efficiency above 85% is generally considered within the normal range. People with insomnia often have sleep efficiencies of 70% or lower, spending a third or more of their time in bed lying awake, which in turn can reinforce the association between bed and wakefulness. One of the core components of CBTI is sleep restriction therapy, a counterintuitive approach in which the time allowed in bed is temporarily reduced to match actual sleep time, building sleep pressure and improving sleep efficiency over several weeks. The approach can feel challenging in the short term, but research consistently finds it among the most effective long-term paths toward restful nights. By now, the shape of this story has become clear. Sleep deprivation is not a single condition with a single consequence. It is a cascade, touching the brain, the immune system, the cardiovascular system, the metabolism, the hormonal system, the gut, the skin, the bones, and the social fabric of daily life. And every one of these systems shares a common feature. They can begin to recover the moment sufficient sleep returns. The body does not hold the absence of sleep against itself. It simply begins, whenever it is given the chance, to do what it was always designed to do. The restoration is not always complete. It is not always instantaneous, but it is real, and it is waiting. All it asks is that you let it begin. You might be feeling tired now. That's perfectly fine. Breathe slowly. Feel the cycles. Your heart beats, pauses, beats again. Your lungs fill, empty, fill again. These rhythms have been repeating inside you for your entire life, without interruption, without effort, without your help. You are part of a cycle that has been running far longer than tonight. You don't need to hold on to anything. Let everything unfold in its own perfect order, like your breathing, returning again and again to stillness. We're almost there now. Sleep is regulated by two independent biological systems working in concert. The circadian system provides the rhythm, rising and falling like a tide, making sleep more or less available at different times of day. The homeostatic system provides the pressure, building with every hour of wakefulness, releasing with every hour of sleep. These two systems are largely independent in their mechanisms, but their outputs combine to determine when you feel sleepy, how deeply you sleep, and how rested you feel when you wake. Understanding this dual nature of sleep regulation helps explain why sleep is not simply a matter of lying down and closing your eyes. The conditions for sleep are created gradually, over hours, and the body follows those conditions with quiet, patient reliability. Light is the most powerful regulator of the circadian clock. Specific cells in the retina, called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, contain a photopigment called melanopsin, which is maximally sensitive to short wavelength, blue light. These cells send signals directly to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the brain's master circadian clock. Even brief exposures to bright light at night can delay the circadian clock by 30 minutes to an hour. This is why light management, dimming lights in the evening, limiting screen exposure before bed, and getting bright light in the morning is among the most evidence-based behavioral recommendations for improving sleep. The eye, in this sense, is not only a window to the world, it is a clock, reading the light to tell the body what time it is. The experience of lying awake at night, unable to sleep, is among the most common and distressing experiences described by people with insomnia. Research has found that this experience is often accompanied by genuine physiological arousal. Heart rate is elevated, brain temperature is higher, cortical activity is increased, particularly in regions associated with emotional processing and self-referential thought. The insomniac's wakeful night is not simply restlessness. It is a state of heightened vigilance that the brain, for complex reasons, has difficulty releasing. Understanding this shifts the frame gently. The struggle to sleep is not a failure of will. It is a physiological pattern, one that responds to the right kind of care and patience. Animals throughout the natural world sleep, and their sleep shows striking parallels to human sleep in its architecture and function. Dolphins and certain whales practice unihemispheric sleep, keeping one brain hemisphere awake and alert while the other sleeps. Birds show REM sleep, as indicated by rapid eye movements observed during their resting periods. Fruit flies show a state that resembles sleep, with reduced responsiveness to stimuli and a homeostatic rebound when deprived. Even jellyfish, simple creatures without a conventional brain, show behavioral states of reduced responsiveness that increase with prolonged activity, suggesting that the fundamental drive for rest may be as ancient as animal life itself. Temperature and sleep are so closely linked that thermal environments have a measurable effect on sleep quality. The ideal ambient temperature for sleep is generally considered to be between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit for most adults, a range that supports the core body temperature drop that accompanies sleep onset. Sleeping in environments that are too warm disrupts sleep continuity, reduces slow-wave sleep, and increases nighttime awakenings. Conversely, cool bedrooms and lightweight bedding that allow the body to lose heat efficiently are among the environmental recommendations most consistently supported by sleep research. The body sleeps best when it can breathe and cool and gently release the warmth of the day. The parasympathetic nervous system, sometimes called the rest and digest system, dominates during sleep. This branch of the autonomic nervous system reduces heart rate, lowers blood pressure, stimulates digestion, and promotes the tissue repair processes that characterize restorative sleep. Its counterpart, the sympathetic nervous system, the system associated with alertness and response, naturally recedes as sleep deepens. Chronic stress keeps the sympathetic system elevated even during sleep, reducing the depth and quality of rest. This is one of the neurological pathways through which psychological stress translates into physical health consequences, not merely through its effects during waking hours, but through its quiet disruption of the restorative processes that should occur every night. White noise and other continuous, non-rhythmic sounds have been studied as sleep aids and found to have a genuine basis for their effectiveness. The mechanism involves auditory masking, the reduction of the contrast between background silence and disruptive sounds such as voices, traffic, or other environmental noise. When the auditory environment is more uniform, the brain's sound surveillance system is less likely to trigger arousal responses in response to individual sounds. In quiet environments, white noise may offer little additional benefit, but in environments with unpredictable noise, it can meaningfully reduce sleep disruptions and improve sleep continuity. The brain, even in sleep, is always listening, and giving it a steady, unchanging soundscape simply reduces the number of signals it needs to evaluate. The role of the thalamus during sleep is one of the more quietly fascinating aspects of sleep neuroscience. The thalamus serves, during waking, as a relay station, routing sensory information from the body and the outside world to the appropriate areas of the cortex for processing. During deep sleep, the thalamus essentially closes this gate, generating rhythmic waves of activity that prevent sensory information from reaching the cortex. This thalamic gating is one of the primary reasons why deep sleep can be maintained in the presence of moderate ambient noise. The signal simply doesn't get through. During REM sleep, the thalamus reopens partially, allowing the internally generated sensory experiences of dreams to flow freely through cortical circuits, while the external sensory gate remains largely closed. The thalamus is the doorkeeper of consciousness, deciding, at every moment, what enters. The glymphatic system continues its work throughout the night, and research has begun to explore whether sleep position may influence the efficiency of this clearance. Studies in animal models found that the lateral position, sleeping on one side, was associated with more efficient glymphatic flow than other positions. This finding has attracted interest among human sleep researchers, though direct confirmation in humans remains a subject of ongoing investigation. The lateral sleeping position is also associated with reduced snoring and lower rates of sleep apnea. The recommendation to sleep on one side has moved from folk wisdom into the fringes of serious scientific discussion. A reminder that sometimes the most practical guidance has genuine biological foundations that research is still catching up to. Waking during the night to use the bathroom affects a significant proportion of adults, and its disruption of sleep is both common and underappreciated. Studies have found that this pattern is among the most frequently cited causes of nighttime awakening in adults over 50, significantly reducing sleep efficiency and the proportion of time spent in deep, restorative sleep. The causes are multiple, including age-related changes in bladder function, hormonal shifts in antidiuretic hormone production, and in some cases underlying conditions worth exploring with a healthcare provider. Addressing this pattern through a combination of fluid management, medication review, and other approaches is considered an important component of sleep health in aging populations. The path to better sleep sometimes runs through surprisingly practical doorways. Dreams about the future, a form of mental simulation, sometimes called prospective dreaming, appear to be more common than previously recognized. Research using systematic dream diaries has found that a substantial proportion of dream content involves anticipated future events, plans, and concerns, rather than replays of past experience. This finding has revised older models of dreaming that emphasized memory replay. The dreaming brain appears to be doing something more sophisticated, not merely reviewing what has happened, but rehearsing and exploring what might happen. This prospective quality of dreaming may serve a role in preparing the mind for challenges ahead. The experience of rest itself, the subjective sense of feeling restored, is not identical to the objective measurement of sleep duration or depth. People can sleep for 8 hours and feel unrested if their sleep was fragmented. They can wake from 6 hours of uninterrupted, high-quality sleep feeling genuinely refreshed. Researchers studying subjective sleep quality have found that sleep continuity, the uninterrupted nature of sleep, is at least as important as duration in predicting how rested someone feels the following day. A single awakening, if it occurs at the wrong time in the sleep cycle, can significantly disrupt the subjective experience of sleep quality. How you sleep matters as much as how long you sleep. The body's relationship with darkness is ancient. For the vast majority of human evolutionary history, night was characterized by genuine darkness, the absence of artificial light. The introduction of gas lighting in the 19th century, electric lighting in the early 20th century, and the proliferation of screen-based devices in the 21st has compressed the duration and intensity of darkness experienced by most people in industrialized societies, more than any comparable change in human history. Chronobiologists estimate that the average adult in a modern urban environment is exposed to significantly more light in the hours before sleep than would have been typical for any previous human generation. This shift in the light environment is considered one of the primary contributors to the widespread circadian disruption that characterizes modern sleep difficulties. The sound of one's own name activates the brain even during sleep, more reliably than other equally familiar words. Studies measuring brainwave responses during sleep have found that the brain responds to the sleeping person's own name with detectable electrical activity, even in NREM sleep stages, where other stimuli produce no measurable response. This finding is consistent with the broader understanding that the sleeping brain remains engaged in a continuous, selective monitoring of the environment, and that personally relevant stimuli receive privileged processing even when consciousness is suspended. The sleeping mind is not absent. It has simply turned its attention inward, while keeping one quiet ear on the world outside. The practice of reading before sleep has been studied as both a sleep aid and a potential source of sleep disruption, depending on the medium and content. Reading physical books, particularly fiction, has been associated with improved sleep onset and reduced pre-sleep anxiety, with the narrative engagement of fiction providing a gentle, voluntary redirect of the restless mind away from ruminative thought. Reading on backlit electronic devices, by contrast, has been shown to delay melatonin onset and reduce REM sleep compared to reading printed material under dim light. The simple act of giving the mind something gentle to follow, a story, a page, a quiet narrative, may be one of the oldest and most natural sleep preparations available. The science of light therapy, the use of bright, full-spectrum light exposure in the morning to synchronize the circadian clock, is now well established, and its applications extend well beyond the seasonal mood changes for which it was originally developed. Research has found that morning light therapy is effective in treating circadian rhythm sleep disorders, improving sleep timing, and reducing the effects of jet lag. The therapeutic dose is typically 10,000 lux of white light for 20 to 30 minutes in the morning, far brighter than typical indoor lighting, which rarely exceeds 500 lux. The greatest effect on circadian entrainment occurs when light is received within 2 hours of natural waking. In this sense, the morning light is a gentle recalibration, a daily invitation for the body to find its rhythm again. Caffeine has a half-life of approximately 5 to 7 hours in most adults, meaning that half of the caffeine in a cup of coffee consumed at 3 in the afternoon is still present in your system at 10 in the evening. The effects of caffeine on adenosine receptors may not produce obvious feelings of wakefulness once the body has adapted, but the blockade of adenosine receptors continues to reduce sleep pressure, even when the person feels ready for bed. Research has found that caffeine consumed 6 hours before bedtime reduces total sleep time by approximately 1 hour. For many people, gently extending the caffeine cutoff earlier into the day can produce meaningful improvements in sleep quality. A small shift with a surprisingly quiet dividend. The experience of dreams changes across the lifespan in ways that parallel broader developmental changes in the brain. Young children's dreams, until approximately age 7 or 8, tend to be relatively simple. Static images of animals or familiar people, without the complex narratives that characterize adult dreams. This corresponds to the developmental stage at which the higher-order processing capacities of the prefrontal cortex are still maturing. Adolescent dreams become more intense, more emotionally vivid, and more self-focused, mirroring the heightened emotional significance of that developmental period. In later adulthood, the content of dreams shifts again, with more frequent appearances of people from the past and themes of resolution and connection. Dreams, in this sense, are not random. They are reflections of the mind at every age. The phenomenon of sleep talking occurs during both NREM and REM sleep, and is more common in children than adults. Most sleep talking is brief, fragmented, and grammatically incomplete. It does not indicate any particular disorder, and in most cases the person has no memory of it. The content of sleep talking, when it can be understood, is sometimes coherent and contextually relevant, suggesting that the brain's language production systems can remain partially active even during sleep, generating output that is disconnected from conscious awareness, but not entirely random in its origin. Sleep, it seems, holds onto language the way it holds onto so much else, loosely, with warmth, without insisting on any particular meaning. The final facts of this journey bring us to a place that science and experience agree upon, though they reach it by different roads. Every system within you Every organ, every cell, every neural circuit is designed to repair, restore, and renew itself during sleep. The brain clears its waste. The heart finds its rest. The immune system replenishes. Hormones return to balance. Memories settle into meaning. The body that wakes tomorrow is not the body that lay down tonight. It is quieter, more ordered, more prepared. And this transformation requires nothing from you except the willingness to surrender to it. Whatever tonight brings, whether deep, unbroken sleep, or something more fragmented and uncertain, the body will use every minute of rest it is given. It always does. It always will. And so, our quiet journey through the science of sleep comes to a gentle close. We began with a body that changes within the very first hour of lost sleep. And we discovered that the cascade runs deeper and wider than most people ever imagine. We visited the glymphatic channels, clearing the sleeping brain of its daily debris. Night after night, without fanfare. We followed the hormonal tides of cortisol and melatonin, of ghrelin and leptin, rising and falling in rhythms as old as the body itself. We learned that the brain's reward system grows quieter and more balanced with rest. That pain feels softer after sleep. That the immune system replenishes. That memories find their rightful places in the dark. From the invisible machinery of the cell to the felt experience of waking refreshed, we have seen that sleep is not an absence. It is a presence, a vast, active, indispensable presence that the body has been perfecting for hundreds of millions of years. Sleep reminds us that restoration is not a luxury. It is the condition under which everything else becomes possible. Much of the healing that sustains a human life happens in silence, in stillness, in the hours that feel like nothing at all. The body does not ask for acknowledgement. It does not require your attention or your effort. It simply asks for the time. And when it receives that time, it gives back something that no medicine, no supplement, and no morning routine can replicate. By pausing to understand this, even a little, we glimpse the extraordinary gift hidden inside every ordinary night. In these final minutes, take the deepest breath you can, as deep as possible. Think about unity of every system within you. The heart, the brain, the immune cells, the dreaming mind, all working together in this one night, in this one quiet body, in this one moment of rest. Think about consciousness itself, yours, and the many others who are drifting into sleep right now, all across the world, in the same gentle surrender. You are not separate from this. You never were. Let your entire being dissolve into the healing darkness, into the soft, patient quiet that asks nothing of you but your presence. Prepare for deep sleep. No boundaries left, only peace. If this thoughtful journey through the science of sleep brought you a little more peace tonight, perhaps a gentle like or subscribe could help another restless mind find this space. It only takes a moment, but it means the world to us. One quiet tap, one sleepy soul at a time. But there's no need to do anything now, nothing at all. You've traveled far tonight, farther than most journeys take you. You can allow these thoughts of sleep and the body's quiet work to fade now, like the last light of a candle gently releasing its warmth, leaving only the soft, unheld calm behind. Let your breathing deepen. Let your body feel heavier, as if the night itself is settling gently around you, holding you, without effort, without demand. If sleep comes, let it carry you the way a tide returns to shore, smoothly, inevitably, into a realm where time and weight no longer matter. If your eyes are still open, the next video is waiting for you, ready to continue the journey. But if they're closed, stay there. Stay in the darkness that feels safe and warm. Tomorrow, the body's patient wisdom will still be there. The glymphatic channels will still be clearing. The immune system will still be tending. But tonight belongs to stillness. Rest well, sleepy soul, and remember, every moment of rest you give yourself, the body receives as a gift. Good night.